What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Eclectic Beard Gaming Reactions. This go around, we're going to take a look at some Scottish accents. Actually using the library for this. So this one, Shetland Scots dialect. So apparently talking up a largest fire festival that takes place annually in Lerwick, in which a replica Viking longship is ceremonially burned. Okay. Before we go any further, like, subscribe, notification bell. Let's go ahead and get into it.
We never did anything like Hogmanay. It was the New Year and that was it. We generally stayed up till midnight. I'm speaking.
Okay, hold on.
Thing like Hogmanay.
Hogmanay. What is that? I don't recognize that at all.
It was the New Year and that was it. We generally stayed up till midnight. I'm speaking about when I was quite young. We'd stay up till midnight, and that was the novelty of staying up and hanging up the new calendar, tacking down the old calendar, hanging up the new calendar, and then we just get to bed. That was it. But it was New Year's Day after New.
So I understand everything is being said except that one word. I didn't catch that. So she's talking about being able to take and stay up till midnight, which is not normally what she wasn't normally able to do. Taking tack up New Year's calendar. So, okay.
New Year's dinner, then we would see what we were going to go guising with, and we'd get all our guys and clays and our face faces, our masks, and we'd all get ready. We'd all gather at the one house, and then everybody get around the houses. And when I was pretty, before I was allowed to go out, then we stood in the windows because folk had torches, they had blinkies, and you could see them going from one house to one house, waiting with great excitement for the geysers to arrive. And
say they're going from wine house to wine house, or from, is that what they call like pubs?
Because folk had torches, they had blinkies, and you could see them going from one house to one house, waiting with great excitement for the geysers to arrive. And they usually had accordions and guitars and dancing. They'd clear the table and chairs because there were no carpets at that time.
So waiting for the fellows to come in. So I heard it sound like she said they take torches. It sounded like she said blinkers, and I don't understand what that is, but waiting for the guys to come in.
And maybe have an ate some rail.
So we've done the whole of Shetland and not asked anybody about Uphellia. Can you tell us what it is for people that are...
Yeah, well, I could tell you some folk that you could go and ask. They'd be able to tell you about Uphellia better than me. My Uphellia, I was always in the tune for Uphellia. So it was great excitement on Uphellia morning to see the galley. That was what you wanted. You wanted to see the galley before you went to school. And the galley shed was not just too far from where we lived, so out our side window we could actually see the galley shed. So it was sitting in the window waiting to see the galley coming out of the shed. I thought its head, because the head could only be putting on once it got on outside. It was just an exciting day.
So that sounds like she's talking about actually seeing the ship come into view.
The junior galley was taken to the school playground, and it was just an exciting day. You could just feel something in the air that it was Uphellia Day. But even yet you feel it, but you have to be, I would say you have to have been born and brought up in Lerwick to actually feel Uphellia. Anybody for the country coming in and seeing it, it's not the same as actually having been born and brought up with it for your very first memories as seeing the galley and feeling the excitement. It lives with you.
Sounds like a very fun time, or a very fun thing to do, or at least something fun to experience.
Country folk didn't have it.
And is it the same now?
It's the same now. It is a great excitement with the bairns. Whereas when we were at school, the galley was just in the playground and we get out to see it. The bairns now are actually trying to see the big galley as it comes in our they're all taking an hour to see it. And it is great excitement. The Jarl Squad goes around the schools and the bairns dress up and they make their paper Viking helmets, and there is great excitement with the bairns.
So his costumes and, you know, I'm sure being a kid and seeing all that stuff, that was fun. So I understand what she's talking about. We're going to take a look at some other ones. Okay, Aberdeenshire. Did I pronounce Aberdeenshire? Aberdeenshire. I know y'all got sh like SHU. I know that ends on some. But is it the same for this? Like, be like Aberdeenshire? That would be how you pronounce it or something? So Jim describes the economic difficulties faced by the local fishing industry.
The 1930s was a hard time. The Second World War actually let the government off a hook, actually. There was so much unemployment, so much desperation. Again, yes, so much how to live. And when the war started, everybody got a job. You know, you can understand that. They were away to the Navy and what have you. I'll tell you what happened in the First World War.
Okay, so I understand he's talking about how it was before the war, and then, you know, the war come, you found a job, you know, people, you were able to take and get a job. I can understand him, he's thick, but I love the accent. God, I love that accent. Like, that's...
You wouldn't have heard about this. It was mostly Zulu sailboats at that time. You see, steam drifter was just coming into vogue in the early part of the 1900s.
Okay, I didn't understand a word he just said there. Sound like he was talking about some kind of boat. But, and then early 1900s. But what happened in between, other than the word boat? And I didn't understand that at all.
I'll tell you what happened in the First World War. You wouldn't have heard about this. It was mostly Zulu sailboats at that time. You see, steam drifter was just coming into vogue in the early part of the 1900s.
Sounds like it's talking about steam just coming into use or something like that. I don't get. I heard steam, but it sounded like Zulu shield or something. It's hard to make out this part.
1900 and 1910. That was the main time for the steam drifters going. But 1914 time, they were all coming, and the sailboats was fishing all over the place, and the drifters, of course. Now, there was a lot of men for the West Highlands. Highlandmen we used to call them, you see. Now, they manned the boats, you see.
So it sounds like that he's talking about sailboats and stuff like that, being the ones being out fishing and everything like that. It sounds like he's talking about Highlanders being the ones that are out there on the boats.
And the local men, and the most of them were in the, what you call it, the reserve, the naval reserve. They were in the naval reserve. They had to go away for a fortnight every year, training, you see. And they got a retainer, financial retainer, you see. So it's a great thing that times to get this handy few pounds, you see. Now, in 1914, there were so many men in this naval reserve that the boats were tied up. A whole fleet of boats was tied up for what they meant to go in them. Now,
So most of the men were in the naval reserves, but they were able to take, and it sounds like he's talking about how they kind of worked due to the fact they left for a fortnight every year to take and do their training and stuff like that. The money they were able to gain from it, they were able to take and plan stuff around it. And then he's talking about, so a lot of this I can make out and hear what he's talking about, but some of these words I'm like, wow. Because it's just he's talking so thick. And I don't think it probably helps that he's probably an older gentleman just by the sound of him.
The men that were left, those that weren't attached to Naval Reserve, they sorted themselves out and manned the boats that were left. See? That's the only way they could get the thing going. Fraserburgh there was particularly struck with this Naval Reserve business. Aye. Oh, aye. And then the 1930s, as I say, was pretty tough. Oh, aye. I was through it, and
I'll say this, like after hearing the woman, and I understand this is an older gentleman, this go round that we're taking, that I'm listening to, I'll say this as far as the differences in the way that was talked with the first one and now him, he's got more of, it sounds like she sounded actually more proper. There were some words I didn't quite, like the very first word, but everything after that, I understood what she was talking about. She'd even talking about the jarl or whatever. We can back then to, I guess, and it had it down there to Earl, but even that. But this right here, there's some words that he said, and how thick he gets with some of the ways he talks. Reminds me of talking to some of the older gentlemen back in up in Appalachian mountains and stuff like that. Whenever we used to go on vacations as a kid, you talk to some of them old timers. They'd have that slow, deliberate way of talking, but the accent being so strong that it's hard sometimes to catch some of the words that they're actually saying. And it's kind of the same way with him. But now he's been talking about how the men that were left in the village were the ones that took and manned the boats, while the ones in the Royal or in the Naval Reserves were away. So I'm going to go ahead and stop with this on this one because we've listened almost 2.5 minutes in. I don't want to spend too much time on any in particular one, but it's definitely, you can tell the difference in not only, because this sounds a little more rough than the first one. Just, it's thicker. Some of the words sound a little more rough, I guess to the ears for me, but for the most part, he's understandable. So. Scottish Highlands accent explains a traditional Highland game of shinty.
It's a stick and ball game played by teams consisting of 12 players, and it's related to the Irish game of hurley. It's a very fast, very exciting and quite a physical game as well, but it demands great hand-eye coordination, and it's a very, very skillful game. And I began playing shinty when I...
So I understand everything he's talking about. This actually sounds more delicate, I guess I would say, than the first two that I heard. It's almost like a more delicate tone to it.
I was in primary school, and the Kilmuir, and indeed the Trotternish as a whole, it wasn't a very it didn't have a very strong shinty heritage like other parts of the island, for Portree or Bernistale or Slate. They did play shinty at some stage going back. I believe they used to have a New Year's game over in the common and the common grazings here in Kilmuir.
One of the things I've also noticed, and for the old man, I chalk it up to his age, but I've noticed that kind of just listening to all three so far, one thing that kind of happens is whenever there's a SH sound, it almost turns into a whistle as those consonants are being spoken into the vowel sound, which is weird to take and hear. Is kind of odd, but it's also, it's interesting because you don't hear that. A lot of times you associate whistles and stuff like that with the way something's pronounced due to, on certain consonants and everything like that, to an older person that's been around for years and stuff like that. So it's interesting to hear that they all three have that kind of, there's certain words they'll say, like when the SHs run together, that kind of gets a whistle, and that's pretty neat.
New Year. But
Or
apart from that,
interesting.
there wasn't a strong Shinty tradition. But when I was in primary school, it was decided amongst the other schools in the end to form a league and to encourage and promote Shinty. And I remember on the first day we got Shinty sticks came to the school, and they were given.
Also, the ST can sound like SH, which is where I think more of that comes in, what I was just talking about. But he's talking about Shinty and how league and everything like that was formed whenever he was in school, and how it's originated from Irish hurling.
To us to go and play with it at the break time. And I think we went quite wild. We were hitting anything that moved, and almost hitting each other as well. And there was one boy, a good friend of mine, and I don't know exactly what happened, but anyway, somebody swung and he got hit in the face, and he had to be taken away to hospital, and the Shinty sticks were locked up until we got a proper coach. And we did get a super coach in Donny McKinnon from Uig, and he took us one day a week down in Uig for Shinty lessons. And
All right, I'm going to stop this one here. It's funny because each three I've been able to take and understand, but each three have their own. Like the first one, the first lady, she sounded very proper. The older gentleman, there's a rougher sound to it, but is also, I love the tone of it. It's thick. Like I said, it reminds me of talking to older gentlemen in the mountains when I've gone on vacation. Kind of the slower, more deliberate way of speaking. Some of the words you just don't catch. This, it's more delicate, almost has a poetic cadence to it, as far as the way the words are spoken. And I understand this sounds like a younger gentleman, probably mid-30s or something like that, late 20s, if I had to venture a guess. And he's talking about Shinty being taught whenever he's in school in the league formations, and how his school finally got a coach that took them to actually practice and things like that. But just the differences between the three, I've been able to take and understand all three of them so far. But the sounds proper. It's got a rough edge to it, and then more delicate. Sounds like it's more delicate on the tongue. So that's very, very that's pretty cool to see. School days and working life thus far.
Did you like read magazines, read comics? Can you remember anything?
I
like
was
that?
pretty much an outdoor person. I was a bit like Jimmy's school. He was glad to see you rebel at the end of the day so you could get back home to get. I stayed on a farm as well.
Okay, this is a much quicker. He's speaking much quicker. It's got a little more middle to high tone of the road. You know, part of the tone, middle to high tone to it, but as quickly as it's being spoken, I'm having a little bit of issue here.
Magazines, read comics. Can you remember anything?
I
like
was
that?
pretty much. And I was a bit like Jimmy's school. He was glad to see you rebel at the end of the
Magazines, read comics. Can you remember anything?
I
like
was
that?
pretty much an outdoor person. I was a bit like Jimmy's school. He was glad to see you rebel at the end of the day so you could get back home to get. I stayed on a farm as well, so farming's been my life.
Okay, so he's talking about how he was happy when the school bell sounded, ready to get away from school, and then how he's, loves the farming, and it's been in this. Okay, so it's just a lot quicker. It sounds like some of the consonants and stuff like that are a little bit more run together as it's being spoke.
Life since I was born, and you just got home and you threw the school books in the door, went and got changed and went outside, and if I wasn't helping my dad in the farm, I was playing with a football in the garden. So that was pretty much my younger day.
And did you enjoy your primary school?
No, I hated school.
Why?
I just didn't like sitting at a table and being told fit today. I preferred, once I got out of there, break times and dinner time was the best things about school. And
Well, he's like a lot of kids. He hated school, break time, dinner time. Yeah, I think that's relatable worldwide.
Playing for the football team. I just hated the school, although now I wish I'd stuck in, but that's a different thing. No, I couldn't wait to hear a bell at the end of the day to get home again.
What were the teachers like? Were they...
They were mostly pretty good. I've got no complaints about the teachers. Maybe the one or two of the older teachers were slightly more strict, but in our day the belt was hardly a thing you ever saw. I think it got a rattle on the table now and again just to keep you in check, but I think things started to change maybe, and a warning usually was enough to get you in check. And
So they had the belt out, but they didn't really use it. They kept it more, keep kids in line, let them know, hey, it's a possibility.
That was school days. It was.
And what happened after you left primary school? Did you go
I went to a secondary school, which was a Marquee Academy up, and it was pretty much like primary school. You was glad to hear the bell at the end of the day as well. Education wasn't a thing that I thought very much of.
What about the secondary school? Were the teachers quite strict there?
I thought you got maybe treated slightly more like an adult at the secondary school. Belt again was there, but it was hardly ever used. It had to be a really bad case before anybody ever got belted.
What about...
So he got away with it a little bit before he got belted, as he said. It's quicker. It took me a minute to take and actually hear what's being said, just because it's so quick. That's still pretty understandable though. Let's see. Edinburgh, Morningside accent. Okay.
I start off at James Gillespie's boys' school in Marchmont Road. 2 years there.
Oh, James Bond.
I emphasise boys' school because it was a separate school in those days to the girls' school, which is the Miss Jean Brodie establishment. So I was 2 years at Gillespie's. I then got...
It's got a very distinguished, it's like a distinguished type tone to it. Completely understand everything he's talking about, though.
Into Heriot's and Watson's. And this was a great problem to choose. Well, actually it wasn't, because my older brother had already gone to Watson's, so that's what made me... I was given the choice. My parents said, which would you prefer to go to? But as my brother was at Watson's, I thought that was the sensible thing to do.
Did you enjoy school?
I enjoyed it in the sense that some people say, they hated their school days. I never hated my school days, but I wasn't a particularly impressive performer. I was a very, very average sort of guy who, both in terms of academic and non-academic activities, apart from school debating.
So that sounds very proper. It sounds very distinguished, almost with a regal tone to it. At least with the way he's speaking. It says Sir Malcolm, so... yeah, it's very... That one's not hard at all to understand. Here, we'll take and do one more. Let's see, Glasgow. Glasgow. I don't know how y'all pronounce this. Looks like Glasgow to me. Glasgow. Cormac recalls us time spent as Butlin's redcoat in the late 1980s.
So what were your dreams when you... obviously you said you left school without qualifications. What did you want to do?
Dreams? I always wanted to be famous. I always wanted to be on the stage. I loved acting, and I really loved being around people and among people. Not in any way sort of trying to force myself upon people, but I always found myself at home with people. And I always wanted to be famous in a comic way.
So this is easy to understand as well. This is a little bit more the way this guy talks. It might be, but it sounds a little bit of proper, a little bit. It's got a little bit of a slight deliberation, but yet quickness to it. If that makes any sense, almost like I said, it's almost got like a poetic cadence to it, though.
And just a way where I could be me, and that was okay, Ambitions, I've never really had any great ambitions. I've always just found a certain semblance of order in an unstructured lifestyle that keeps me sort of going,
So you obviously said you
Wow, so other than wanting to be famous, he had really no ambitions. It's just keeping like I said, keeping structure in an unordered, order in or structure in an unordered lifestyle. These last two have been extremely easy to understand. The first one, or that third one, was he's just real quick, so it's kind of hard to catch some of what he said there at the beginning. The older fella, my lord, that was the one that just some of the words and the way it was spoken.
It's become famous. I know you became a red. You worked at Butler.
Yes, you can say red coat.
That's
Yes, you
red
can. You
coat.
can
Why
say
did
red
you
coat.
just
It's
say
quite
red
okay.
coat?
No, I'll let you say red coat. You can
Well,
say red coat.
I mean, why did you decide to do that?
Well, I'd been in Germany. I left when I was 21 in 1986. I went to Germany for 2 weeks and stayed for 2 years. I get a
Went for 2 weeks and stayed for 2 years. Woo! It's a nice little vacation.
job in NAFI and with the NAFI as a silver service waiter. I had a great 2 years in Germany, but as things transpired, things fell apart and I came back over to Glasgow. It was quite strange because I can understand completely how my father must have felt, seeing me as a bit of a waster and, I dressed like a tramp and I didn't shave and, I didn't really sort of conform. I wasn't in any way interested in what they're all out to do, this great ethic to go and make lots of money. Just, I'm sorry,
So he had the problem a lot of youngsters have had, and that's finding themselves and, parents being kind of disappointed in the fact it's taking so long and, he's a silver, he was a waiter or whatever. So this has been, let's see, and I think that's all of them, or maybe not, but that's all the ones I'm going to look at today. We'll save these three and a couple of these over here for later. So that being said, thanks for watching. Y'all be good to each other. Love yourselves. Peace.